Star Trek Strange New Worlds, Season 4, Episode 4. I'm shocked to see that homaging is going on here. Even of fan films. Like, the Klingons wore gray, no one wore blue, so round up the usual suspects. Let's go ahead and play it. Hey, it is Dr. Trek, Larry Nemecek, coming at you here from the heart of Trekland and letting the dust settle just a bit on all the new headlines and fresh Trek episodes, right? So instead of another hot take or a quick take, you get a second opinion from Dr. Trek. Hey, look, I have been writing, editing, interviewing, witnessing, hosting, archiving, dot connecting, and yes, fanning Star Trek for a while now. And I just want to say, a case of Chiaroscuro. Pay no attention to that black and white gimmick. This is really an Una show that just happens to get into some gray areas for her. And to be sure, Chiaroscuro is an art form that utilizes the contrast between light and dark. Oh, I see what they did here. Now look, since this episode hit, it has struck me that parts of this one have, yes, shocked, and surprised some fans. Once again, apparently a chunk of younger folk really do think they don't have to pay attention to what happened before they were born. But that's not only Casablanca, but the original series as well. When 23rd century Klingons occupied and enslaved lesser developed cultures all the time. So, don't be misinformed. Pull up a chair, preferably an Art Deco chair, and let's plunge right into little things, big things. Big things. So yes, along the way, you do have an homage to Casablanca here, and the Battle of the National Hymns is right out of the Marseille scene in that classic movie. Now, the Klingon theme, of course, is their battle song, drinking song, making its fourth time in screen canon here. It debuted in DS9's Way of the Warrior, and then twice more on Voyager. On the other hand, that alien player piano was a curiosity, but it meant that you didn't have to insert the pesky equivalent of a character, like Sam, Rick's sidekick from Casablanca. So it left you with Nevet's henchman Roman as a personal, if not a movement trader. Didn't have to go there. And of course, you get at least the starter of one true homage line of all the gin joints. Oh, which leads me to another big thing. In the original Casablanca, the irony that Rick expresses with of all the gin joints, in all the towns, in all the world, she walks into mine. Well, that's all about seeing the actual real Ilsa Lund again. I mean, what are the odds, right? In this case, the irony of beating the odds is not about an exact person, but a perfect look-alike. Yes, a doppelganger. Now look, I love the Una story here, among others, but the whole plot hangs its hat on the coincidence of an exact double and a culture that's not teched up enough for precise quantum scanning yet. That's a big hat rack. So thank goodness our characters talk about what an amazing coincidence it is that one of our heroes is a doppelganger of the key native at the crux of everything we deal with. Oh, that'll take care of it. What is that? Not technobabble, but chance babble? Oh, little thing. We'll synthesize civilian attire. Oh, not replicate. Yay! That's very TOS. But the shuttle here has synthesizers capacity? Did TOS shuttlecraft have that? Sure allows them to pivot quickly as needed, as with here. By the way, Shuttle Cervantes, Enterprise number 5. It's named apparently for the author of Don Quixote. It's been seen 3 times prior to this, but this is the most prominent on screen. Especially when you take a 45-degree descent angle to land planet side. Wow. And Ortegas is nowhere near those controls. Little thing. Now, the Angelus 1 probe was said to have drifted into Klingon space for 160 hours. So, quick on the draw there, Starfleet and Enterprise. And to really visually bring it home, it's cool that we get all of this great map work again from Tim Peel's graphics team, including this little inset that shows the proximity to the Klingon border, right? And why it is so important, and why everybody is delicately walking on eggshells here on this simple rescue that blows up into potential covert action that's going on here. Little thing, if you even dare start to complain about how the Matari alien natives look so humanoid, oh, baby, that's about as TOS-y as it gets. Along with this poisonous Borgia plant that's mentioned. Wait, was that some kind of 60th anniversary nod right there, maybe, since that is the poison that's suspected in the murders that are breaking out in the very first Trek episode aired, The Man Trap? Big thing. And I mean elephant in the room big thing. So, the premise of this black and white episode, I mean, come on, if you've got the musical episode explained away, you can do it here. And what we've got is the infrared black body spectra of the Mataran star, and how that radiation only affects how we see color. You know, just like in episode 9 of fan film series Star Trek Continues, when a black and white seeming planet, where the natives are not dressed like a 1940s wartime overseas collaborator murder, but the same explanation of unique stellar radiation affecting the color sensing cones of the eyes. Now look, Mbenga aboard the shuttle says the tritanium in the shuttle's blast shields might lessen the impact, but no, apparently. My original question with all this, look, I get it, okay, on the planet, right? And maybe even in orbit, despite the shields and the force fields. But outside the system, where the Enterprise is safely lurking, right, on its side of the entire Klingon Federation border, outside the star and its system? Oh, wait. Oh, we find out that it's a lot more than visual color sensing at stake here. The radiation affects even sensors. And that blinking out affects La'an, telling Spock about where the D7 goes off the sensors and then it blinks back? Okay, explained. Oh, and that explains, in turn, why the D7 didn't detect the shuttlecraft in the beginning, much less the Enterprise, when it was right there, only a few thousand meters away. Okay, we're going to explain it all that way. But then again, if so, why does the color return the minute the shuttle leaves the system and crosses back over across the border at the end? Oops, I guess I've already bleeding over a little bit into questions. Is that medical ship the USS Yang that Chapel talks about? Is that named for the Chinese traditional medicine concept of Yang, the active, warm, functional, and moving energy of the body? And if so, do we get to hear about a USS Yin later on sometime? Obviously, it'd be a much more cooler, a more passive, and a structured sister ship. That's the definition of Yin to Yang. You're welcome. Oh, and when Uhura relays that Kor and his crew are about to finally crush Matan so that the natives no longer have positions of power, doesn't that include Navette and all of her henchmen? I mean, he thought nothing of telling her that? Favorite lines. Okay, there's just one this week, but come on. Really? Do you have to ask? I mean, look, this season, the litany of ironic lines goes on and on and on, but this time, unlike David Marcus or Sam Kirk, it is non-lethal. In fact, it's life-saving, just the opposite, and you know what it is. It's Scotty. in the one scene he has this week. Cross my heart and hope to get stuck in a pattern buffer. I mean, we know, right? Relics, poor Franklin, didn't make it. Okay, enough said. But speaking of casting characters, hey, finally we get back to our new Vulcan cadet, Cadet Asha. That's Bianca Nugara as Cadet Asha. Still too brief. But, is she the most assertive cadet ever? Or is that just her Vulcanness, Spock? Is that why you have avoided having a scene with her so far? Meanwhile, what you did not see coming, right? Last week it was writer Catherine Lynn and her alter ego original T'Lyn guys calling the bingo. This week, you get longtime director of photography Glenn Keenan with 20 disco titles on his CV and 14 of the 34 Strange New Worlds to date, as a fedoraed bar patron, a featured extra at our first look at the bar. Cool. That's him. Our lead guest star this week, Demore Barnes as Commander Core. Didn't see that coming. What a surprise and a delight to see John Colicos's pioneering template Klingon for all time replicated in Demore Barnes's delightful diction and savory unsavoriness. I only wish they'd had him inquire in the cafe about the vegetable of the day. If you know, you know. And especially since he has the mind scanner, aka the mind sifter, the mind ripper, that Core uses on the Organians and Spock 4 years from now. Now look, you fans making fun of this prop, just come on. Errand is a classic. Do some homework. Now, the fact that Core was a direct descendant of Kahless, well, that's kind of new, as stated. But then, Core was called a member of the Imperial family, so by definition, if Kahless was the first emperor, I guess that tracks all along. Now, I gotta say, I was disappointed, because I had to go check, that the ridges here in his visage, they're nowhere near a match for the way his forehead ridges look a century later as an elder on DS9. So where does that leave us, Canon Smoothers? I mean, either the ridges you get after augment viri recovery can be very different than those you had prior, or after a few decades, does those century-old Klingon forehead ridges just droop and flatten? Oh, but had that slightest of flirtations with Una's Nivette character continued, he would have been glorious. Now, meanwhile, down the call sheet, look, for this tight, focused show, we have no Sam Kirk, no Jim Kirk, no Pelia. We barely have a Scotty and an Ortegas. Spock and La'an, with Chapel in a tiny scene as the topper, they make up what there is of the B-plot. Indulging in another baby step along the way for La'an to discover, to talk about, finally, apparently what's going to be her background is the reasoning for the drama behind her exact augment nature in relation to Khan. Somehow, we finally hear about that, figure it out. And then we get the creepiest, oddest, glowiest appearance by Pike ever. I mean, I kept expecting some kind of alien body inhabitation to be grafted into this plot somehow, or springboard into the next episode. This was a bravura turn for this select trio. Way overdue for this kind of focus and really, really underserved so far. And was it an accident of theme that this black and white episode full of grays includes the two characters in the cast with the darkest paths, and they are teamed up with perhaps our most innocent sheep of the senior staff, who leaves this story much changed, sadly. Now look, What a brain explosion it was to combine Celia's wearing of that 40s garb and that hairstyle. It was adorable with the trauma that Uhura goes through. Even just a roughed up interrogation and not outright torture. I know it was still hard to watch. But come on. After all that, is Uhura grit a term yet? She has come so far since those early cadet days, naivete. She's grown up so fast. And yet here she is in these tough trenches, striding in measured, strong steps. And here she rises to the challenge. You get the feeling that she will always rise to the challenge. You also get the feeling that Nichelle's Uhura would have always done the same had we been given the chance to see her do it on camera. Well, at least before the movies. You know what, now that I think about it, it was the animated series that actually had some of her strongest leaps and leadership moments. But it's all in line with what the writers and Celia and Nyota are giving us here, week by week, on Strange New. Thank goodness. But it strangely all flows. I just feel cheated that we didn't see more of it. As with Chapel and her ingenuity, with Majel in charge, what we got to see with both of those female characters. Now, I gotta say, the more I see of Babs as Mbenga, which is a bit of a surprise considering that rough first season, well, since then, the more I see, the more I want. And I gotta say it first, for a probe retrieval mission, I was sitting here thinking, why is Mbenga here? Why is the doctor along? And then within a few minutes of the visual jarring, the sensory overload, the hurt natives, I thought, oh, that's why. Hey, his shady past and his covert killing machine toolkit, it's no secret now, boy. So here we add to the pile. He single-handedly wiped out a whole mob of loyalists, of natives on Ulget who were surrounding a hospital he was defending. And that was his first time out to be stationed. And hey, do all of his aliases, was Joseph Ruick a combined form of his daughter Rukia? Maybe. But look, those and his coy avoidance of Klingon planet infiltrations, does it really come as a surprise after all this? It's just piling on. He has definitely been the surprise, though, as the most interesting flesh out of a legacy character, even just a guest star twice, at least in my book. By the way, Uhura's false ID name here, Nakuru, is, don't forget, Mbenga's birthplace in Kenya. Rebecca finally gets a chance to not just lead, but to tie the character dots together that we've been randomly being tossed over 3 seasons. It reminds me so much of what happened to Riker and how it finally was not until Best of Both Worlds 3 seasons in, at least to me, that it all came together for Jonathan and the writers behind him, that Riker seemed to gel. I feel like that's what's happening here with Una. Because, hey, by first adapting her simple mission to be a survival mode, and then letting her get involved personally for the good, more than the Prime Directive, though, would have smiled upon, yeah. You do realize that Una has gone full James T. Rogue TOS society-saving mode here, right? And she justifies it by ethics and morals and the way she had to carry her own secrets unjustly. But it just feels like this pulls all those threads together. Whatever else, 40s vibe or not, Una really served here. It's really a nice tidy-upper here for her story arc. That Roman, her collaborative hero turncoat, she figures him out, then she predicts and she uses that traitor to become an unintentional dead hero after all. She uses him for her own ends because she knows what he's going to do. There at the end, with our bartender friend, we even get a little Commander Taggart, Commander Malthazar moment here at the end. If you know, you know, Galaxy Quest. No, you can be the leader. You can take it from here. You don't need me. That was a really interesting vibe at the end. And it's very Una. Now, we're still waiting to see where all of this leads us for her and her big picture. So stick a pin in that for sure. But to wrap up, yes, this is an ode to Casablanca and much more. For one thing, it's a throwback to the Kirk era Klingons, right? And the brutish thug imperialism before we found out the Klingons had honor and were like alien samurais. Oh no. Kirk's time, the 23rd century, brutish thug imperialism, right? Whether they get compared to commies or Nazis. The parts of this do feel, as has been said, as much about like East and West Berlin as it does maybe Nazi-occupied France. But it all works. It all works. And actually, the creators this week in interviews have cited everything from Metropolis for the tech level of civilization and the blimps and the trains to Notorious and No Way Out. And then for law and psychological thrillers, I mean, way beyond Gaslamp, right? Or Gaslight. Especially 70s eras. So, thank goodness, perhaps, that the plot didn't lean just into Casablanca. Since, I don't know, DS9 already went there with Quark's one-time lover Natima Lang, remember that? The hunted Cardassian resistance leader. And then they backed off a bit, and it wasn't so Casablanca-ish. But hey, that was safely filmed in color too. Actually, the writers have said this week in interviews that this black and white film noir idea has been kicking around on the big swings list ever since season 2. So here we are. And it's conveniently married to, finally, a big Una story. Oh, writers. Who are our writers this week? Yes, kudos to them. First, Skylar Ojeda, who began at Secret Hideout as Akiva Goldsman's assistant on Short Treks and Season 1 of Picard. And then he went to Strange New since the beginning as co-executive producer Harry Alonzo Meyer's assistant, and then the writer's assistant. And he's making his first script sale ever with this one. It's a shared credit, though, with Dana Horgan, who is the experienced hand in this pairing, right? She's a writer and co-executive producer who began way back herself as an assistant to the producers on Hell on Wheels, which coincidentally was Anson's first big series, and came up through the ranks as a producer for 2 seasons on Once Upon a Time, 3 on Supergirl, and became co-executive producer here on Strange New in season 2. Now, this is her 6th writing credit on Strange New. There's 2 more to come, and another in season 5. 14 various credits each on Supergirl and Once Upon a Time. And it was good to hear her this week, sidebar, bemoaning in one of her interviews the limits of the 10-episode season that we keep talking about. I know that the writers are chafing at the bit against the limits that 2020s have stuck many of their kin in TV writing with. It's good to hear that. Our director this week is Mira Meenan. She's a first-timer to Trek, Indian-American director, coming in with 6 episodes in For All Mankind and 4 on The Magician and a host of others since 2009, including the indie pick Farrah Goes Bang, which won a ton of awards at festivals. And you know what? Production-wise on this show, yes, the black and white, yes, the amazing costumes, the set piece, the AR wall adapted to this cafe, and even a bit of a tracer. The hardest thing of all, I think, with those city streets, making, 12, 15 extras look like a whole city, that's hard. Now, overall, this one seems to have gone down mostly well. This mix of film noir or the Casablanca references, or just Una getting that good, strong episode down finally. Now, on the design side, production designer Jonathan Lee and costume designer Bernadette Croft, they come in for applause as well here. But I've seen some news sites just agog that this was all actually filmed in color, and that the designers magically researched fabrics and paints to register on the grayscale, so that the final look was suitably contrasty, and not muddy. Hate to break it to them. Voyager's Captain Proton sequences 30 years ago were filmed exactly the same way, because that whole color to grays conversion, it's all been well researched. The pigment shift, it's a craft that art directors and costume designers, anybody in design, they've been dealing with it since, I don't know, the days of black and white TV, late 40s to mid 60s. I Love Lucy and all the rest, anyone? I mean, nobody painted sets or dyed costumes in grays. Creatives in those fields just learned and shared the information of what kind of color to come across, how they would come across in different tones. In fact, the original series with Pedro Guzman and then Matt Jeffries as art directors, Bill Tyson costumes, all of those guys, they had to do the same thing because, in the day, over half the country was still watching in black and white. They didn't have color TVs, the majority, just as the network started to turn over to finally film that way. In fact, selling color TVs for NBC, who was owned by RCA, TV maker, that was the original Prime Directive. But yeah, watch TOS sometime. If you can get a color absent filter, watch. It's amazingly clear how those uniforms are in 3 different tones, even in grays. Now, I have to say, a couple of things seemed off-putting, and like they were chalked up to the compromises that come up with TV. One is the way that, the confrontations, when you have a backup mob with you, that's one thing. Like when you got the dueling music anthems. But to have an interrogation one-on-one in the middle of a big fancy cafe at a table with everybody drinking and chowing down around you, that just seemed odd. But even more so, are they really comfortable with this public meetup of the underground members just out in public, on the sidewalk, at the bar, constantly in the street on the sidewalk? And then finally, halfway through this scene, he says, "We should not be seen together." Well, duh. And while I think that her actions are a real character moment for Una, as I've said, I just got to say, though, in the big picture, as a historical criticism of Trek now, as we include Kirk going rogue so many times, in contrast to, say, Picard a century later, who rarely did and got into conflict for it. This whole filter of what the Prime Directive means and how it's applied evenly or not, maybe this story proves it. It's not just Kirk. Maybe it's the prevailing vibe of Starfleet right now, at this era, to interpret the Prime Directive so loosely. I mean, it doesn't apply in one sense to the natives here, because they're aware of off-worlders, they're aware of warp drives, even if they don't have the tech themselves. So now it's just a case of non-interference as such. Vietnam analogy, private little war. I mean, the natural order being upset by an outsider as cause for a further de-upset, or I guess we'd say reset. Hey, that's prime James T. Kirk territory. Or Janeway and Caretaker, or on and on and on. Strict Prime Directive be damned. Okay, I lied. I have one other big question. So as Spock and La'an are continuing their B-story mystery, I'm thinking, when was this written? That mention, that nod to Odyssey. Did they anticipate the approximate overlap of the time this episode drops with the Odyssey hoopla and the premiere? It was so much easier in the old days when you knew that, say, 2 big Robin Hood movies are coming down the pike in the next year. You do Cupid, you do a Robin Hood episode. Oh, look. Turns out this was written in summer 2024. Season was all sketched out by July, and here we have a July 15th news story about tickets on sale for the Odyssey a year early. Yes, they were that smart. So, that's our latest big swing trademark. But really, apart from the puppets, what's next? Look, we've just had this string of weird little puzzle pieces all season, wondering where it's all leading. Starting with La'an's little breadcrumbs of her augment self-discovery and self-examination. Please let us in on the secret when you find it out. We've also got all these little token chapel scenes one at a time. Another one this week. And yes, sorry, I'll say again, why is Pike so spooky, eerie, calm, glowy, quiet, leading? I mean, I guess we'll hit the season's midway mark next week and find out. Oh, one more thing. Why are the opening titles for this episode in color? The crossovers titles were animated. The musical had a cappella titles. Just seems like a missed shot. Oh, and Core's guys are really leaning into those samurai glitter robes, huh? Kind of explains the shiny metallics 4 years from now in Argania, huh? Maybe? Well, that's as good a place as any to sign off on this second opinion. But what did you think, huh? Drop your comments below and please like and subscribe. Boost the signal, would you? Hey, I dare you to subscribe for some Star Trek sanity. Most of all, if you crave more Dr. Trek and the Trekline point of view, please check out every Trek pod, live streaming experience we offer, like Trekland Tuesdays Live, Cadet Alice, the Trek Files podcast from Roddenberry, my deep dives on Trek Culture channel, and yes, Portal 47, our backstage monthly deep dives and guests, all things creatives and background, and our Trekland Treks Hollywood locations film site tours. And yes, my TeePublic store and our cameo visitors, videos, you can visit all at LarryNemecek.com. Hey, I'll see you back here next time for another second opinion. Until then, trek well, everybody.